Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Voice of Vault podcast, McMaster University's meme and media podcast. Here with me, joined in the Ethernet studio, is former Vault President Andrew. Say hello.
Hello, everyone.
That was a bit late, but we'll work with it. Today, we're continuing on our discussion about what exactly deconstruction is and, what it is in terms of anime. If you'd like to learn exactly how we define deconstruction, please go back to our first episode. We have it all set up in the first 10 minutes. And in the last episode, we talked about the specific genres of magical girl and mecha through the lenses of shows like Madoka Magica and Evangelion. A bit of a tour, not a detour. We're still looking at deconstruction, but different in that I'm going to be looking at some specific anime and genres which use a very different method of deconstruction to... They still work by identifying and then critiquing the internal and external elements of a genre. However, they do it in a much different way, and this particular way is comedy. It's almost at the point of parody in the case of One Punch Man, at least. So, without further ado, to it. The first anime I wanted to talk about, which I think of a modern deconstruction, which honestly we haven't seen very many good ones recently, and this one has kind of shined, I guess.
We'll take either, I think.
Yeah, and it's One Punch Man, and basically One Punch Man, for those of you who've never watched the series, is about...
I've actually not finished it. Never finished it.
Have you read the manga, or have you watched the anime?
I've only seen a few episodes of the anime, and by a few I mean like 2 or 3.
Fully caught up with the manga, so I basically have all the references and stuff in tow. Basically, One Punch Man is about a man named Saitama. Saitama, and his power is a big one. He's able to defeat basically anything with one punch. So he is so overpoweredly strong. Punch, whether that be a gigantic sea monster, a giant conqueror Thanos type space alien that came out of nowhere and wanted to conquer Earth, all these different threats, it's all gone. And One Punch Man specifically looks at a very particular genre, which is actually, Andrew, you said earlier that we'd be looking at the shonen genre, but that's not entirely accurate because One Punch Man is not so much of a shonen look at the superhero genre specifically.
For context, shonen is the genre I say I know the least amount, next to like the harem genre. So,
right. So shonen is...
Not surprised I am wrong.
Shonen is a bit different from superhero in that shonen is about a character arc of one person who's able to, grow, etc. Either physically or emotionally or both of them, right? And it usually recounts on this journey, this coming of age story combined with the hero's journey. This one character who is initially weak, abject, and emotionally weak, becoming emotionally, physically, socially strong through a various attribute that they usually hold on to, and that's an emotional attribute. Usually it's associated with kindness or friendliness or hope, or like in the case of Naruto, pure determination and spirit. But in the case of superheroes, it's much... what's the word? Familiar to Western audiences because it's basically a superhero thing. It's like any Avengers, Marvel superhero story, right? You've got this hero, gone of justice, and delivers upon that justice to villains, monsters, etc. Interesting thing about One Punch Man is that it's a deconstruction of the superhero genre, right? But it uses a different approach from other famous deconstructions like Watchmen, which brought this realistic, nitty-gritty feel to the world, right? And it's because of Saitama's, not One Punch Man's, but Saitama's overpowered approach to the show. Two main points that I wanted to talk about that pertain to One Punch Man's like approach to deconstruction. Figure of Saitama as a hero and the actual other heroes, right, that are working in the show. Mm-hmm. So, it's an interesting one, right? And it's because he's so strong, right? And it provides some challenges to the writers to, do good writing around a person who basically annihilates any single challenge that they come across. They handle it in an interesting way. Mm-hmm. What is the figure of Saitama? Saitama has no backstory with his life, and he wants to. He's being a hero for fun. He has no intrinsic purpose, backstory or motivation behind his actions. There's no tragic story as to why he became a hero, etc. And even worse than all these is that the way that he uncovered his powers was not as usually attached to the tragic backstory, whatever. He literally just did push-ups, sit-ups, and ran 100 days, a couple years. So he's extremely overpowered, and yet he's a blank slate, right? Set of hero figure to have, because obviously that's not much of a character. Mm-hmm. So the entire point of One Punch Man is to rip on the traditional hero narrative, and he does this more than just this blank slate of a character. He does this by being physically overpowered. So one way I like to look at it is particularly interesting because One Punch Man kind of gets at this existentialist, absurdist view of the world. This is an interesting point that I kind of drew up from various readings, right? Mm-hmm. Philosophy of existentialism. There is a particular concept called the absurdism of the world, right? And this particular notion is that is intrinsically meaningless, right? So there is no meaning behind the things that happen in the world, and by consequence, there's no meaning to the things that happen to us, right? So the things that we do, the ways that we structure our lives are intrinsically right, and yet humans, for some reason or another, just in order to fill this void, we are always seeking to find meaning, whether that be in something like God or a job, etc., right? Mm-hmm. Delivers on this philosophy in a very interesting way, and it's through this impending, unstoppable nature of Saitama. And I'll look at some specific examples, but essentially what this super overpoweredness does overrides the individual struggles of characters, villains, genre roles, meaning, etc. in this particular show. In the end, this overpoweredness shows that their struggles, the things that they're trying to do, be a villain or a superhero, are ultimately pointless. I'll take a look at some examples. Andrew, you said you watched this, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you said you watched a couple of the episodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which one?
Like I said, not much. I can't give you the exact number. It was quite a while ago.
Okay, well, in the first episode of the show and the first scene of the manga, there's a giant like character that comes and annihilates an entire city, right?
Yep, I remember that one.
The whole arc is that he's nature's punishment for man, right? He is there because man is polluting the world, and he has evolved out of nature in order to punish humanity, right? Suddenly, he's confronted by Saitama in front of him, right? And Saitama, in one punch, kills him. Like, do everything that he was aiming towards has been instantly annihilated, right? And we see a similar sort of narrative in Evolution, where there's this one mad scientist who's trying to build the perfect individual, and then Saitama comes and blows apart the entire, proving that he is like the utmost superior being, and that their entire years of research has been in vain because this one person who they've never met before, never seen, has just entirely like demolished everything that they've been working up.
It's interesting that you focus on the idea of what Saitama is to the other characters, because
Right.
I've always viewed One Punch Man from just what the power does to Saitama himself.
Right.
The second
that is-
episode specifically, where
Yeah.
the mole people, I think, if I'm remembering the episode correctly.
Where he comes out and he wakes up and he was fighting these people, right, that were supposedly really powerful, right? But then the reality confronts him, and he realizes, oh, he's too strong for this, and these are actually really pathetic enemies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of degradation of meaning, and to comedic effect, mind you, works both on the individual character and on the people that work around Saitama. So not only is he destroying meaning for other people, right, but he confronts the fact that at the top, right, when you're so strong that absolutely nothing can stop you, when there's no point, his whole struggle for existence has been eliminated. When you realize that you're at the top of the world and there's no place to go higher, that's kind of a sad place to be, right?
Mm-hmm. And it does that very well. Most superhero stories deal with the nature of power, using it correctly, responsibility, its abuses. But One Punch Man, it's about how power is actually quite soul-crushing when you have too much of it.
It's boring, to be totally honest. It's
all
like
the flavor in the world is gone. That dream where he fought the mole people, and the mole people were actually harmful and dangerous. The joy in his face, and that
when he was
bland, cartoonish face he has when he has to navigate real life.
Yeah. And he was exuberant when he felt like adrenaline, anger, pain, all these things, right? When he has to confront the reality of a situation where he's so powerful, it all breaks down in front of him. That's a really good point. There's, but it doesn't only just work with villains, like his property of destroying meaning. It also works with, for example, other heroes. So, for example, Genos, who becomes his disciple, studying and modifying his body for years and years and years, and Saitama comes out of nowhere, an unknown hero, and defeats that Genos has had this immense fight with, just like the Mosquito Girl, if I remember correctly.
I have seen this clip. I feel many people have seen that clip.
He's about to self-destruct. He's about to kill himself in the name of justice, because if he doesn't save it, if he doesn't kill himself and kill this person with him, the entire city is going to go down. There's an immense amount of tension, and then suddenly Saitama comes out of nowhere and accidentally swats the mosquito, because he's on a quest to kill the mosquito that keeps on dodging his own punches, right? He backhandedly kills a villain which has been marauding the populace for quite a while, and Genos' whole story arc up until that point is entirely defeated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the tension that the battle is building, etc.
And Genos is angry for this fact, right?
Well, he's surprised, and then he's a little angry. He confronts the Saitama head on, and then they have that kind of battle moment, right, where he realizes how strong Saitama is, etc.
It says something very, very contentious, I feel, that life, like it is, he would rather have died with meaning than be alive, but without satisfying his own personal narrative in life.
Which is so interesting, right? Because this is what One Punch Man does so well. It breaks down the distinction between what we feel to be meaningful, right? Especially, and it uses the superhero genre for this specific purpose, because superhero genre is latent with meaning, as a purpose. They're always there for a reason. Okay. Every single villain is doing what they do because they have a purpose. They have a reason, right? But basically, anyone outside of, for example, Joker, has this one backstory. They're trying to do something, and either they use good means or evil means to get it. Of the figure of Saitama, all of that crashes down because there's no purpose to any of it when you realize that there's one overriding thing that is so powerful that it can eliminate any challenge or any problem in the snap of an eye. That tension, we need that tension, right? And that's what makes One Punch Man so interesting. The thing that I thought was interesting when I wanted to bring it to a philosophical place, was that the absurdist philosopher Albert Camus, similar function, right? So view Saitama as this overriding, unstoppable, terrible force which comes in whenever it wants and absolutely wreaks havoc on any form of meaning that you have. When Saitama comes in, Death in real life, right, has the purpose of, so to speak, right. Death is the end. Nothing past that, right? So to Camus, there's no afterlife. There's nothing, right? And death swallows everything. Confront this impending coming to all of us that robs us of meaning. And we can go over these in depth and at a different time. It's nihilism, existentialism, absurdism. But what absurdist philosopher Albert Camus says is that we have to strive with that meaning, right? So we have to recognize that death comes for all of us, right? And that ultimately the things that we do are meaningless, and yet we still have to become absurdly. So this is, I think, the main point of what a deconstruction of the superhero genre is aiming at, and it's specifically meaning. In case One Punch Man does a terrific job of that. They look at this nexus of meaning, which is the superhero genre, something that's very blatant. Like I said, everyone has backstories, and then it erases it on both sides of the coin. It leaves us a little bit with a problem, and that's an interesting story like this, because if you have a person that's so overpowered that they can just go through anything, nothing really that you can do with that, right? And I thought it would be they do some interesting things with this. First of all, the majority of the story, you won't know this because you haven't read or watched most of it, but we focused on a little bit, and that's only in the beginning. We focus on the non-Saitama story arcs, whether that be the villains or struggling with their perceived meaning, right? And the text is kind of seductive in this way because it challenges us to these characters, whether they be good or bad, right? This person has this arc, right? And they are super serious about this arc. I'll use Genos and Zombie Man as an example. is from a tortured past. He's had a terrible childhood. He had a tragic backstory. His village got obliterated, and he is becoming a cyborg in order to become more powerful to defeat people. His character development of him receiving upgrades, learning from Saitama, and becoming emotionally more developed.
I agree with the overall picture. I want briefly, before we move on to your next example, your take on, do you think that One Punch Man utilizes this more as just like the nature of its plot, or does it actually like explore dealing with the meaninglessness? Or is it played, as you said initially, more like a parody, like the comedic material of the narrative?
That's a good question. Probably take a reread of the series, but we know very clearly that the authors are trying to do this, right? The time that they introduce something with meaning, they tear it down, seductively trying to get us to, but then it pulls the rug out from under us whenever we're about to get to that point, edging you on for the entire series. It's kind of like Rick and Morty in that sense, whereas we're tempted with finding out this overarching story for whether that be Saitama or Rick in Rick and Morty, but we're never actually delivered it. Yes, it's comedic, right? But also I think that they are trying to focus very specifically on that aspect, but they never, to your other point, they don't really philosophically into that, but oftentimes they'll take various stereotypes of what a villain is. Your vampires, your aliens, you've got utilitarians, you've got these people, you've got that people, right? Mm-hmm. And in the face of Saitama, whether they be no matter their ideological disposition, right, are just destroyed. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's all meaningless, and we're trying to fill the meaning, but in the end, just it all, it punches you in the face.
Well, everyone, thank you for listening. This has been the Voice of Evolve podcast with me, your host Jesaya, and Andrew as our secondary. Thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed what you listened to and you want to hear more, please feel free to go to our YouTube channel, simply the Vault Publication on YouTube, for other podcasts and other fun stuff that we do on there, although I'm not sure what we have planned in the future. If you'd like more multimedia content, please feel free to go on to our website, thevaultpublication.com. That's www.thepublication.com. That's all the time that we had for today. In the next episode, we're going to be talking more about this topic of deconstruction, and as it specifically pertains to the isekai genre, like I said in the intro. Well, anyways, thank you again for listening. Hope you all have a great day. God bless. I'll see you in the next one.